Good afternoon. So welcome everybody for our keynote address of our wonderful alumni event. So I'm delighted. I'm Lenny Pitt. I'm Associate Head of the Computer Science Department. And I am delighted today to be able to introduce our keynote speaker. Mark Tebbe has done an enormous number of things, and I'm going to try to touch on some of them, and I hope to be able to leave him some time to give his talk. So Mark has had an amazing career as a technology visionary, entrepreneur, consultant, angel investor, and mentor. He's been a great friend to the university, and I'm delighted to be able to tell you a little bit about him. So after graduating from UIUC with a bachelor's degree in CS back in 1983, Mark launched Lante Corporation, a Chicago-based technology consulting firm. Over the next 2 decades as CEO and chairman, he helped create over 250 new businesses while also building the back-end infrastructure and websites for major companies, including Microsoft, Dell, American Airlines, American Express, and Charles Schwab. After Lante was sold in 2004, he co-founded and served as lead director and vice chairman of the board of Answers Corporation, building on his inspiration to create a productive website to aid his son on a school essay. So that's really what happened. Mark co-conceived the Answers.com website, which became one of the web's leading Q&A publishers and was sold to Announce Media in July 2011. So Mark has also served as operating executive at Lake Capital, where he was involved in guiding and aiding numerous portfolio companies with their business operations and strategies. He's also been prolific as a consultant to both leading companies and nonprofits, and he sits on the boards of several companies and civic organizations. Mark's insights have appeared in leading national publications, including Business Week, Fortune, and the Wall Street Journal. A few of his awards and recognitions include Chicago Alumni of the Year, College of Engineering's Alumni Award for Distinguished Service, induction into the Chicago Area Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame, Crain's Chicago Businesses 40 Under 40, Crain's Chicago Businesses Tech 50, and Microsoft's Solution Provider Partner of the Year. He's currently chairman of Chicago Next, a dedicated public-private effort to improve Chicago's competitiveness in science, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and serves as both an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship and entrepreneur in residence at the University of Chicago's Polsky Center. So again, we're absolutely delighted that Mark could join us today, deliver his Computer Science Alumni Awards distinguished keynote. So please join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Lenny. We'll see how distinguished it is when we're done. So, first off, I'm flattered and honored to be able to speak here for everyone. This school and this department has just touched me in so many different ways. It's really astonishing. I mean, I know many of you feel the same way. So what I want to do today, I was thrilled to be asked to do the keynote. I'd been asked several times, and my schedule never allowed me to come do it. And so I wanted to just kind of take some time and walk through the impact of this, but more importantly, turn it around and really talk about how it can be, it's not a story about me, but a story about how all of us can help make what we have here even better than what it is. I mean, we have a lot to be proud of. I mean, if you look at it, no matter which way you want to look at the accolades, we have the 6th ranked College of Engineering in the world. That is a phenomenal and spectacular achievement, and it's been that way since I went to school here. And as you know, I graduated in 1983, so that's 35 years ago. It's just one of those amazing accomplishments. Even prouder is we have the 5th ranked School of Computer Science. And so we have the ability to see so much more of what we can do here. I mean, just it's overwhelming to imagine how much we've been able to get accomplished with that. We're the 1st ranked public institution for international student population. And it's amazing. I don't think a lot of students in China, Korea, Japan, all throughout Europe say, you know what, I want to go to college. I think I will go to a place in the middle of cornfields. And so it takes a lot to draw, and obviously those first few points are the reason that we're able to get it drawn here. But even more than that, when they come here, they're infused with the part of this organization, the school, the state, and even the USA with a piece that changes them forever, just like it's changed all the students here forever. So I think it's amazing to be ranked as #1. In terms of undergrad quality, this one has changed dramatically from when I went to school here, but to be the top 3 colleges in undergrad quality is amazing. It's really been a focal point and one that's really done well. Top 10 most innovative universities according to Edudemic, which keeps track of all these, and it's exciting to think about. I mean, you look at what's going here, and as you start to really understand our department, and more importantly, the college and this university, it's infused into the bones of this whole university. 22 Nobel Prize winners, and 117 patents issued in last year. This place knows how to get things done. They know how to, and they're very much recognized for what they've accomplished. And that is something that we all could be proud of. And it shows. I mean, let's take a minute and just look at the number of engineers. The little people I'm going to show you is 1,000 students, okay? And everyone compares us to Caltech, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, and then us. So let's start with engineering students, 1,000 at a time. If you go to Caltech, they have just about 600 students. I was debating whether I should put the top half of the person or the bottom half of the person, but we're going to go with the bottom half of the person. About 600 students in Caltech. It's good, that's impressive. MIT, known for a lot of things, they have about 2,000 students. Impressive. Stanford has about 2,500 students. Impressive again. Berkeley has about 3,400 students. Now, to show you the power of the university, University of Illinois has 11,000 students. They have more students than Caltech, MIT, Stanford, and Berkeley added up. It is one of these facts that is often overlooked here. It's missed in so many different ways to be thought of. It is astonishing to think about. And so you see this all over the place. No matter where you go in the world, when you say I went to University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign College of Engineering, people are like, I know someone from there. And they're usually in leading positions, they're usually doing phenomenal work. It's that type of quality. But look at the numbers. You take the next 4 schools that are often compared to us for engineering, add them up, we still dominate them. But that's good, but that's engineering. Let's talk more specifically about computer science. Same 4, okay? Caltech. This is, now the little guy's only 100 people, that's why he's a little littler. We have Caltech, 100 students in focusing computer science. MIT, 300 students. Impressive. Stanford also has 300 students. Berkeley has 400 students. That's 1,100 students if you add it all up. University of Illinois has 2,400 undergrad students. Again, an impressive quality. And it's something which we all have reason to be proud of. I mean, they are here because of our demonstration that this is a great institution for them to be at. I see, since I was here 35 years ago, a little bit of influence. I think I might have had some influence, although I was unable to influence either one of my kids to come to school here. I at least was able to help influence other people to say it's a meaningful school, maybe you should consider it. And the word is out. Look at this. This is the number of students enrolled, admitted, and applied to the university over the last 13 years. It is astonishing runaway. We have well over 5,000, almost 6,000 students who apply for a computer science degree here at the University of Illinois. Now let's put that in perspective, because that number in itself, and we basically admit about 1,200, and we actually enroll about 400 and change. Put it in perspective, University of Illinois, large school, has 150 different majors, 150. 1 out of every 7 students who apply to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign apply for a computer science degree. They know how good of a place this is. They know how it will change your life. They know what opportunities are here to really make a difference in your life like you have never envisioned. I was one of those students. I actually get teased from my kids all the time about it, but basically it's just one of those things. But let's take a step back. When you think about it, there are 2 ways that you could live your life. And so everyone gets this choice. And I know there are thousands of parameters which you get to decide, but there are 2 fundamental ways that you can live your life. Way number 1, paint by numbers. You already get an idea of what the painting is like. You already get an idea. You get to put some creativity to it, but it's pretty much cast out. You don't really have to take a lot of risks. You basically just you get a little expression of, making it your own, but you really are in a position where it's predefined for you. And you get some control, but not a lot of control. It's safe. It's easygoing. It's basically, predestined. Many parents, I'm confident, my parents were very happy if I was a paint-by-number person. Because my dad worked his whole life in a dairy, and he basically was involved with the Teamsters Union. My dad was what you'd call a 40-40. 40 hours of work a week, sometimes a little bit more, and 40 years of his life. And in return, the Teamsters says, you give us 40-40, we'll give you a pension for the rest of your life. And they've done well. My dad is in his 80s now, and he's still receiving his pension, so he's going to make sure that he gets his money's worth out of them. But it's a safe route. My dad would have been quite happy if I would have said, I'm going to stay, we'll get here, I'm going to get a great job, I'm going to be in the Teamsters, and I will be taken care of for life. I did not have that vision. I am of what you would call the other part, which is the connect the dots person. Now, connecting the dots is a lot harder. You can't tell when you start what it is. You can't tell where it's going. You basically are at this point, and you are looking for your next option. And it's somewhere. It could be up and to the left. It could be off to the right. It could be down. You're not quite sure what it is, and you have to search for it. You don't get an idea of when you first start, you have no idea what it is. You look at those dots, you can't figure out what that is. But as you come along and you start connecting the dots and start drawing it in, it starts filling itself in. And as time goes on, you can accelerate. You can paint, you can connect the dots a lot faster because the image is starting to show itself. And you can start making some moves. You don't want to be careful not to move too fast and make a mistake, but you can get the idea it's smoothing along. So as you're moving forward, you get the ability to basically see your life unfold in front of you. A lot more risk-oriented, a lot more challenging, but if you do it right, it has huge rewards. So I was basically torn between this. So when I born and raised in Illinois, decided I wanted to challenge my life, I had a great life. I grew up in a great family. I grew up in a small town, and we'll talk a little about it in a minute. And my parents would have been very happy and very proud if I would have stayed in my little paint-by-number life and had a great life, but that did not seem appropriate for me. So I decided to take a chance, go to college, and basically try to make a difference. So I chose the connect the dots phase. Now, so let's put it in perspective. Since this gets to be an alumnus talk, and since I don't know all of you, let's give you some details on my life, because this gets to be a little bit about me. But I'm going to turn it around and tell how it really is about you. All right? Like I said, I am 100% Illinois resident. I have never lived outside of Illinois. So my kids make fun of me because I have my stepkids lived in Washington, D.C. for 4 years of their life while they went to school. My kids went to neither New Hampshire or Connecticut. They live now in, one lives in D.C., the other one lives in, she's going to be upset, I don't remember, Boston. She lives in Massachusetts. They live outside the United States, and they aspire to live outside they live outside the state of Illinois. They aspire to live outside the state of Illinois. For me, I grew up in a town of 200 people. I know the little sign says 282. That's today's population. When I was a student, when I was growing up, when I was a high school student, it was 200 people. I went to a high school that was about 6 miles away from where I grew up. There was 11 towns that filled my high school. We had a graduating class of 78 kids. It was very different than coming here. When I moved here for the first semester, I had more kids on my dorm floor than I had in my entire high school of 320 kids. It was an entirely different world here. It was a world I was totally unprepared for. It was a totally different than I'd ever seen before. I'd never really seen a lot of, outside of a few trips here and there, had never seen a stoplight, never regularly rode an elevator except when I was off visiting like a mall or visiting a doctor's office or something. It was an entirely new world here. But it's a world which I basically wanted to do. So I decided, having looked at the different schools, that I was going to go to the University of Illinois. Now, it was help decided for me. State of Illinois at the time had this great program that if you did well on the ACT, you could get a scholarship from the General Assembly. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do that. Otherwise, I would have never been able to afford to go to school here. And so I got befuddled that the states cut back on its funding to the universities because programs like this basically allowed me to do what I can do. I never would have been here without them. And I basically decided I'm going to come here and I knew what I wanted to do. I had become extremely interested in computers. And it all started when I was growing up and when I saw the Apollo moon launch. As a kid, we didn't have a TV until I was 8 years old. And so we basically had a situation of going out. My dad went out and got a new antenna, got a new TV so we could watch the Apollo moon launch. More importantly, the landing. And it's an amazing concept. We take it for granted today. But if you think about it back then, what we have was a piece of metal full of electronics that basically sitting on top of a big bottle rocket that basically shoots up into the air for a known amount of time, drops it off, and starts circulating the Earth. At some point, after about 3 or 4 rotations, they say, you know what? We feel pretty good. They, for 20 seconds, pop another rocket, and they take off on a quarter of a million mile journey. They get near the moon, and they get caught in the gravitational. They pop another 7-second defuse, and they basically start to circulate around the moon. They circulate for a few times and say, we're feeling pretty good about this. They then separate the lunar lander away from the capsule which brought it all the way out there. They then bring it down, land it. Even though the computer said don't do it, the guy who was calling Neil Armstrong, just out in a great movie, they basically took controls and made it happen and landed it on the moon. They get out, they run around, they get their pictures, they put up the flag, they pick up a bunch of rocks, they get back in, and now comes the time of the real test to see if you can do it. They blast off, they get up into the lunar orbit, they circulate the 2 rockets together, and they basically reconnect. They climb out, they pull the rocks along, they bring all their goodies that they're going to use for souvenirs in life, and they basically bring it on over. They then separate them, and they start their flight back home. They fly a quarter of a million miles back home. They land and they come into the Earth's atmosphere. 1 rotation around the Earth, they land. They land within 1 mile of where they're originally aiming to land. When you think about the fact that the Earth is moving, the moon is moving, spinning, turning around each other, the whole thing is moving around, and you're imagining how they could have done this, it is humanly impossible to have done this without computers. The scary part is, today's computers you have more computing power in an Apple Watch than they had in the entire NASA program to do this program. It is astonishing to think about what they were able to get accomplished. But that single event caused me to realize I love computers. And I started playing with them, I started getting more into them, and I realized that that was something I wanted to do. I grew up on a farm. I was basically figuring out a way to say, how can we take things apart, put them back together. You know, my father was very good at it. We always bought, used equipment or broken equipment and fixed it. My dad could fix anything. And it was an amazing concept. And I was really thrilled with technology and electronics and things like that. Got me into looking at this. And I decided I wanted to go into computer science. And I was fortunate enough to get to the University of Illinois. And I'll tell you a little story later about how I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. But I spent my 4 years here. I graduated. And I really decided I'm going to make it big. I had gotten married my junior year, right after my junior year of college. That was a little unplanned. Worked out great. But I ended up in a situation where I decided that because I was married to her and she had a job in Chicago, I was getting a job in Chicago. And so I ended up going to work for Arthur Andersen & Company. And the reason for Arthur Andersen is because I had an internship. We'll talk more about that later. But I stayed there for about 1.5 years. And I went in thinking I'm going to get promoted. And they informed me that microcomputers, which is what I was working on at Arthur Andersen, was a toy. They said the only good thing you could do with this microcomputer is basically connect it to through terminal emulation to a mini or mainframe. Other than that, it's not worth anything. I had a fundamental disbelief in their analysis of that. And so with that, I've decided, you're telling me the only way to get promoted is to work on a mainframe computer or a mini computer project. No desire to do that. I'm really enthralled with what these microcomputers are. And I had the audacity to quit in my review and walk out the door. It took me actually 6 weeks to walk out the door. But I basically was quitting, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I started trying to figure out what I was going to do. I started looking for a job, but I had to make money. I mean, I was newly married. And so I decided what I'm going to do is basically take a step back and do some consulting to fill the time until I could find something. Because let me tell you, tech jobs in Chicago at that time were not very prevalent. They're dramatically better today, but they're not very prevalent. So I ended up skipping out of that and just started doing some consulting. Before long, I had more work that I could take on, so I hired someone part-time, had more work that we could take on. So I was selling during the day, doing the work at night, having someone work part-time during the day. I hired another full-time person, another full-time person. Within a little over a year, I had 8 people. I decided, I know what I'm going to do. So I ended up creating my own consulting firm called Lonte Consulting Services. It was originally called Tebbe and Associates. When you're 23, don't put your name in the company. It's really a bad idea. Because everyone meets you and says, well, God, you look young. I don't look as young as I used to anymore. But back then I was 23, but I looked like I was about 15. And so they'd all tell me about their kids, but they wouldn't ever trust me credibility-wise. So I ended up teaming up with a gentleman who was 15 years older than me, Andy Langer, and we became Langer, Tebbe and Associates. About a year and change later, he said, hey, I'm done working on the software program I was working on. I'm going to quit, and I need my name back. So we created a company called Lonte, ran that company for 20 years. And as Lenny pointed out in the overview of me, we did a lot of great things. I had some amazing employees, had a lot of fun with them, but more than that, we did some great stuff. And we were always focused on the new technology. We started with microcomputers, we moved into local area networks, we moved into databases, we moved into databases on local area networks, we moved into client server. We tried a little bit of pen computing, that didn't work out so well, we went back to client server. We then got into just web pages, static web pages, then we moved into transactional web pages, then we ended up moving into transactional systems, and we then ended up going public and selling the business. It was a fun ride. We were constantly challenging ourselves and growing with new technologies. We sold it, as you heard, in 2004, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But life had been pretty good when you take a company public and sell it. You get a little bit of opportunity to decide what you really want to do. So I decided I was going to I was at my lake house, I decided to start programming, because I hadn't programmed in like 4 or 5 years. And my thesis was, if you can think it, if you can program it, you can make it happen. But I didn't know all the cool tools, I didn't know all the new technology, so I basically got into open source and started playing with it. With that, as Lenny pointed out, my son had a problem with one of his papers. We were using Google to do the research, didn't work, no problem. This was the problem I wanted to solve. I never thought I would build a business off of it. At the end of the summer, everyone's like, hey, I saw you sold your business. Hey, what are you going to do? So I'm working on a startup. You got to tell me you're working on something. You can't say I'm not doing anything. I also learned an important lesson. It's no fun to be retired if none of your friends are retired. So I realized I had to do something. And you have to be a good role model for your kids and work hard and everything else like that. But what I pointed out was, this is what I'm working on. And I'd show people, and they're like, that is so cool. I would use that. And then one of the people I ended up showing was Marissa Meyer, who said, oh my God, this solves a problem. Could we use this at Google? Within 6 weeks, we were on the result page of almost every page in Google worldwide. And with that, we had a business. I found a business partner. When I wanted to buy a patent, we ended up merging the 2 businesses together, and we ended up becoming Answers.com, which I should take the screen for. And Answers.com became, over the 7 years we had it, from an idea of getting me to go back to programming, all the way to becoming the 10th largest website in the United States, 31st largest website in the world. We then were talking to Google, and they wanted to show us a new piece of technology where they autofill the question like they do today, and they autofill the answer. We realized it's no good to have a website named Answers if they're giving you the answer before you even go to the website. So we decided to sell the business, and with that, I thought I was done. But again, no fun to be retired, and you got to be in a role to give back. But I was debating what I was going to do. I had gotten divorced in the first business. We won't talk much about that. So I was single for 16 years. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was dating a girl, and I thought, I'm at a point in life I could do any number of things. So I decided I wanted to basically do something productive. I got approached from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business to teach, so I became an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship there. I had volunteered along the way. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then more importantly, they gave me the opportunity as a person who does not have a master's degree or a doctorate, but did go to an amazingly great school and has a great undergrad, to go and teach to the MBAs how to build a business. I teach 2 courses. They're very popular, so I'm very lucky. And that's what I do. And then in the last few years, as part of giving back to the community, I was approached about a group that I was helping with. They asked me if I would take over and run. And so it was Chicago Next. It's the public-private partnership between the city of Chicago and the tech community. So it's fun. When I was actually up on the stage probably a year and a half ago. So I was sitting over there, I had Rahm Emanuel sitting over here. It's always entertaining because Rahm's like, I'm the mayor of Chicago, he's the tech mayor. So it worked out kind of nice, but it's been a great thing. And it's more importantly for me a way to give back to the Chicago community, especially the tech community that has done me so well. I was very fortunate to build both businesses out of Chicago and really do it, and live my whole life in Chicago. So let me do one thing here real quick. So basically, when we ended up in a situation, give you a little highlight of me. Remember I said I couldn't decide what I wanted to be? I actually started here as an electrical engineer because I thought it would be kind of cool to build stuff. I'm sorry, I started originally as a computer science person to register because I thought it would be fun to build, to do computer science. As the summer was getting closer and I was getting closer, I kept reading more about it because now I was really going to do it. And it talked about building stuff. You have to be an electrical engineer to build stuff. So I basically, over the summer, called the university and asked if I could switch from CS to EE. They kind of chuckled and said, sure. I remember not a lot of people asked for that, but sure, you can. So I just come in on the first week, we'll have a form you have to sign, and you'll be switched. So I switched. After about a year of being in EE, I discovered a couple of key things. They're called the laws of physics for a reason. They're called basically like a lot of things that you can't do with electricity. Software, if you could dream it and build it, it could be done. It's amazing how broadening and wide opening it is. So I switched back to CS. But along the way, I actually was able to, I came into the CS department, and I was able to really want to get more involved. And so at the time, I'm like, well, I want to get involved in a student group. The electrical engineers had a great undergrad student group, because no longer being an electrical engineer, I couldn't do. So I said, I want to go to the CS version. They said, well, we really don't have one. The ACM chapter's really become the GSO, so the grad student organization. That's okay. They had grad students. I thought it was going to be a grad student. They had donuts. I love donuts. So I thought, I'm going to go to their meeting. So I went in their meeting, and they all looked at me when I walked in the room like, what are you doing here? I saw some of my TAs from some of my classes, and they said, this is for grad students only. I was a little upset by that, because I thought it was cool to hang out with a lot of people that you get to play with. And so I looked into it. The ACM chapter here had died in 1965. For 15 years it had died. My goal was, we can resurrect it. So I went through the paperwork, I went through the process, we resurrected the ACM chapter. And I'm thrilled that the ACM chapter is doing well and still alive to this day. But along the way, when I was in electrical engineering, I got to work on a chip called the Votrax chip, which I'll talk about when I talk about how professors impacted me. In the course of that, I did a freshman project at Engineering Open House. I didn't win any awards, but a lot of people saw it. A lot of people thought it was really kind of cool. It helped me get my first job. So I wanted to do the same thing with computer science. And so I went over to the engineering council that was running the Engineering Open House. I said, I want to give me the paperwork, I want to apply. Describe what it is, because you had to go through an application process. And they said, oh, no. You're in computer science. That's not an engineer. I'm like, it's in the College of Engineering. They say, yeah, but it's also not in the College of Engineering, and it's really not an engineering degree. I'm like, yeah, it is. They're like, no. So then I got to go meet the dean and petition to the dean at the time that if I'm in the College of Engineering and that engineering group gets to do it, we should be able to do it. He thought that was a pretty logical argument. So he gave us the allowance to do 3. Now other teams, like the electrical engineering, had about 15 projects. We got to get 3 submitted. So my mission was to take on the main one. And I wanted to basically demonstrate. I was a little spider, I had a little chip on my shoulder. And so I was basically decided, I am going to prove to the College of Engineering that the computer science department not only needs to belong in the engineering school, but is fundamentally so critical to the engineering school that they need to pay attention to it. So as you'll see, we won an award. The College of Engineering Open House was called Building on Dreams. We created a campaign called the Computer the Cornerstone. The goal was very simple. There's a rich history here that was unknown about computer science in the University of Illinois. We were going to make it known. We took it upon ourselves to go through the basement of DCL to all those rooms that you never wanted to touch that were full of dusty old equipment, pull them all out with the professor and say, what is this? And they would tell us, and we would write it down, and we would get it organized. We then went to professors' houses, through their garage, through their sheds in the back, through their basements, finding old computer equipment that wasn't even around here anymore, and said, what is this? And they would tell us the story of it. And we built it into this whole display talking about the history of computer science at the University of Illinois, from the ORDEC through the ILIAC to today. And we even threw in some other stuff. Because if you look at it, the history is amazing. ILIAC 1 was an amazing computer. It did some just fundamentally phenomenal stuff. But then they come along with the ILIAC 2. That's Sylvia Ray, who was our ACM sponsor, basically wiring up core memory. That is a 64-bit core memory, not 64K, not 64 meg, not 64 gig, 64-bit. And he was wiring it by hand. He became a very good seamstress, he told me, by being able to wire the little donuts between all the little meshes of wire. We also touched on the plasma and the Plato screen, which was created the same year I was. We'll talk a little bit about this guy in a little bit. And then lastly, we even threw in some 2001 Space Odyssey, because you know that everyone here knows that it was referenced to the University of Illinois for a lot of great reasons. And so we came in second, but more importantly than that, it was accepted by the Engineering Council. We had to pay a membership fee to the Engineering Council, which I didn't anticipate, but that was okay. And everything became recognized at that point, and it was seen as doing. And I get thrilled every time I come here on campus, because for a long time, the original materials were in like a set of cabinets. Now they've moved them around, they've added some new ones. But the core stuff, when you go look down the hallway and see the iliac one, those are our stuff. I mean, the little chip that broke off, I broke it. You know, I dropped it when I was putting it into a car. You know, it's okay. We actually had 2 of them. Don't worry. We dropped the other one too at the same time. It broke a lot bigger. We gave that one to the Boston Computer Museum. We kept the nicer of the 2. So on and so forth. And you know, it was really set the stage. And so I think we've come a long way from even that time of period. But it's really, we are here because of these people and what they've accomplished. And I wanted to make sure that our school knew that. So I ended up, you know, we won second, so that was cool. And then I got to be involved in a class. My counselor said, you need to get more involved in business, because you don't have the patience to be a researcher. You need to go talk to people. You need to get out. We're doing a new course between the business school and computer science. You need to take that class. So I did. So I was in the first class of what was at the time called CS 390, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it was basically teaching you how to be a consultant, how to listen to people's problems and how to apply a solution to it. I never knew how it would affect me, but I just thought it was a great course. When I graduated, New York Times called our school #1 in the world. I was ecstatic for that. It was a great year to do it. It was primarily tied because the year before we had won, the University of Illinois Computer Science Department had won an award for the most publications influenced. That was obviously weighing heavy, but I don't care. We were #1. I graduated that year. Case played. So, and then I believed in the school so much, as I built my company, Lante, I kept coming down here. And my little company, at the time we had 30 employees, 40 employees, 60 employees, 150 employees. We were the largest recruiter of computer science talent here. It was really kind of amazing to think. But I knew how great these students were and how much opportunity they could have. And then I got lucky. I actually won the Engineering Service Award in 2001. I also was elected Alumni of the Year at the same time. Kind of amazing how those 2 happened to come at the same time. So I will never be able to win the award that you guys are all winning. So congratulations on winning the award. I can't get it. But more than that, I was thrilled to be honored for what I had accomplished, because I try to be invisible. My goal is not, you will never find a classroom with my name on it. You will never find a scholarship with my name on it. You will find a lot of cool stuff in the ACM office that I might have bought them. And you come back for Engineering Open House, I've got a new one coming up with them. But I mean, you'll see that I give anonymously, I give privately. It's not anyone's information or worry what I give. I know it drives the advancement people here crazy, but that's life. You know, I want to make a difference where I can, and I just, you know, was thrilled to do that along the way. So, let's talk a little bit now. That's enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about the reality of the situation. Steve Jobs put it best. The journey is the reward. That's why I like connecting the dots. Paint by number, you know what I'm going to do. I'll put a little green here, I'll put a little blue there, and I'll look at that as a pretty picture. It's more fun to go and see the discovery of it. And this was a motto that he lived his entire life with. He became far more reflective when he found out he was not going to live long, when he basically was getting older and getting more sick. And so he started to get more, you know, prophetic about it. But this was a story that he said all along. I mean, when I first met him in like the late 70s, I mean, this was what he was talking about. It was, dude, it's a fun ride, just hold on for fun. And it's the way he lived his whole life. So let's talk a little bit about that. Because the journey started here for me. And the reason it started here is I was able to come here and get infused with knowledge, just like all of you, and just like the students are now. It laid out a lot of the groundwork, but not a lot of the content. And it's one of these things, people are amazed, like, how could it be such a great school? You didn't walk out with any real skills. Oh, yes, I did. But let's be clear, punch cards were not a big thing by the time I graduated. They were a big thing when I first started here. My first 3 classes were all on punch cards. And it was not a fun experience if you dropped your punch cards. and had to pick them all up and reorganize them. But this is what we do. Punch cards were a reality for our classes. It's hard to conceive right now, carrying a box of Hollow cards down and handing it to an operator who's going to run it. And you're doing it overnight so you get better use of your computer time because you're only allowed so many cycles of the computer. And so you run it at night where you get better processing. It's just a way to think about it. You're not going to use this in life. I guarantee it. We did some of the most amazing computer technology stuff with Lante. We never touched a punch card. Never. So someone like, okay, you didn't learn a lot with punch cards. PL1, another language. Programming language 1 was great, but we never used it outside of class. It was used sporadically in some industry stuff, but I never touched that again. Fortran, fortunately I never had to use Fortran in real life. It lived for a long time, but it was not exactly fun. It was more frustrating because you wanted to dream what you could do, and Fortran's like, no, 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 no. We don't have a verb for that. You can't do that. It was more fun to use other languages where you didn't have those limitations. It was a great language for a lot of people, not for me, but I had to learn it. Never used it again. Machine language, what I was in talking about it, get in a situation where if you want things to go fast, you have to write an assembler. Today, no one even knows assembler. You do a core dump of a computer, people are just boggled by it. You just don't see it. It's all hidden from you. Same with Pascal. We did use Pascal for a while. That was a good language. But when I went over to start doing the business computing, they wanted to teach us COBOL. Outside of my time at Arthur Andersen in class, I never took COBOL, never touched COBOL. Thank God, because all it was big coding sheets that you handed off for someone who was professional to punch the Hollow cards to put the information there. Never had to worry about that. Microprocessor design was a super hard class, super interesting. Never used it again. And then lastly, Boolean algebra switching theory. Hated the class, loved the professor, hated the class. But it's amazing, when I think about what I learned here, those are the core of my degree. I never used that material again. Yet, the knowledge that I got fundamentally changed my life. Fundamentally. So today, I talk to students all the time, they're like, yeah, we're using some blah, blah language. How I'm really good at it. How relevant is that? Is that a good skill to have? I'm like, you'll never use it again. And they get kind of depressed. Like, no, 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 it's all good. We're okay. But it's one of these things where you just got to get the idea and get to them across. All right. And same thing with combinatorial and discrete math. But the best part is we were building on top of others. And this is one of the things that is so true to the students today. The reason that 5,000, 6,000 students are applying is because they know what's accomplished from others here. So I'm going to take a few minutes because none of them are here. Unfortunately, several of them have passed away. But I'm going to share with you some of these professors and what they did for them. And for those that are about my age, and I know that several of you that are, you're going to appreciate this. The professors here impacted my life and changed me forever. Jim Snyder. Jim Snyder is actually a physicist. He's passed away now. He died in like 1985. He's a physicist, but he was one of the first programmers on the ILIAC 1. He was the gentleman who I had to go sign my piece of paper with, to switch from CS to EE. He's like, are you sure you want to do this? EE is so boring. I'm like, no, it's so cool to build stuff. I can't wait to get a solder. I'm going to learn how to solder. I'm going to put this together, and I'm going to really do some amazing stuff. I got the chance to see him a year later. He was a physicist. He's the one who told me, they're called laws for a reason. You don't get to go around those laws. And so I got to see him when I did my quick signature. I didn't really interact. The next year, I got to plead my case why I was coming back to computer science, because I didn't realize it was super easy to get out of CS into EE. It was way harder to go from EE back to CS. But he remembered me. And he went on to become the chair of the department. But for me, he was always that voice of reason that I always was. And because I did this, he always would see me in the hall, he'd chuckle about it, and he would tell his friends about it, like this stupid kid. But he was one of these people who I could always count on for good insights. Don Bitzer changed my life in that he was the father of Plato. And we're going to talk a little bit about Plato in a bit. But he grew up 20 miles from my parents' house. And when I came there, my mom said, you go check to so-and-so. His cousin, such and such, says he's really nice. If you get in trouble, you should go talk to him. Well, I didn't get in trouble, but I did want to go find him because I wanted to work on something. And people are like, you should go look at Plato. I'm like, Plato? Yeah, Don Bitzer's thing. I know Don Bitzer's name. So I went in, and I walked in, and I said, hi, Don. I grew up in Sawyerville. And now my town's 200 people. He grew up in Collinsville, which is like 3,000 people, 5,000 people. And he's like, never heard of it. I'm like, I grew up. And he's like, okay. what can I do for you? I said, I'm here because I want to work on a project. Well, what are you? I'm a freshman. I just moved into EE. He's like, oh, what can you do? I'm like, anything you need. He's like, here. He handed me a device that was a box about yay big that they were trying to figure out how to turn it into a silicon chip. And it was from a company called the Federal Screw Corporation. It was from their vocal division. Like why the Federal Screw Corporation had a vocal division was beyond me. They bought the technology from some inventor. I don't know what they were thinking of, but they had this. And they were trying to now figure out how to make it from a box to a chip. So they gave him one and said, could you help us with this? And he basically handed it to me and said, this thing can make people make talking noises. You should figure out how to use this. Because there's people who are blind and people with impaired vision who can't work on Play-Doh. You should do that. And handed it to me, and that was all I knew. I said, are there manuals? He's like, no, you can just figure it out. It was an oscilloscope. Now, I never had an oscilloscope growing up. So it was a learning opportunity. I teamed up with a TA, with a grad student who was a TA. And as I got more into it, he got less available because he had to do a lot of his grading and stuff. So it fell by the wayside. And I started figuring out, okay, I got it. But I didn't know anything about phonetics and linguistics. He's like, oh, you need to meet this guy, Bruce Sherwood. Bruce Sherwood is a guy who will take the linguistics and make them happen. And thought leader, he's still alive. He's at North Carolina State. And he basically said, oh, super easy. All you got to do is tap into the ASCII stream that's feeding the display buffer and catch it before it gets turned into dot matrix for the plasma screen. Convert that, throw it through an IPA translator, you're good to go. None of this stuff existed. And he made it sound like super simple. I'm like, how do I tap it? I'm thinking like I got to like put like a little bit thing in the back and bits are going to fall out. It didn't happen at all. So he's like, oh, you need to go talk to Professor Gear. So Bill Gear, who eventually also became a department chair, said, oh, super easy. There's a video memory buffer that you need to tap into and pull from there, which is kind of cool because with answers, we ended up, we ended up remembering, and we built off of the video memory buffer. That was one of the secrets of answers is we leveraged it, the video memory buffer to basically figure out disambiguation for terms. But here we basically got a stream of what characters were coming at it so we could translate it. And so worked with him, and he introduced me to a few people. With that, I was able to put together my overall project. And I realized I loved building stuff. I hated electrical engineering. And so I moved back to computer science, got to go visit Professor Snyder, who then was the department chair, got his signature again, or like he said, I just don't think of me as signing it, just think of me as unsigning the document I shouldn't have signed in the first place. Like, all right, I appreciate that. And I was able to basically then get an advisor. Sylvian Ray was my advisor. We saw his picture when he was threading the core memory. He basically was the one who said, when I asked about the ACM, he's like, well, yeah, the grad students don't like undergrads in this thing. Like, I don't know, it's not like I ate that many donuts. But they basically didn't like us. So he's like, you should resurrect it. Here's all the old files. Went down and found the old files, which are still in the back of the ACM room, I know. And basically, you figure out how to restart this thing. And we did. I found 5 of my friends. One of my friends said, it was an overachiever in a lot of ways, so I want to basically be in charge of it. Great, here you go. And so we ended up building it up, and it took off, and it all did well. But Sylvian Ray touched me in so many different ways, because he was the one who said, don't think about what you can do. Ask yourself, why can't you do these other things? And I never thought about it in that way. And then I got to deal with George Friedman, who taught me, if you want things to go fast, write an assembler. And he's still alive, too. I haven't seen him, but he's still an emeritus here. He's about this tall. But he was like always moving around, high energy. But he was basically the one who basically said, if you want to do well, get low, get in the details, nothing beats assembler. And well, now today, a lot of things beat assembler. But the one thing that's for sure is he was right. If you really want to get into low details. And then the one that became my final counselor is Dave Liu. I know he has a scholarship named after him, but more than that, Chung Wang Liu was a Chinese, he grew up in Zhenghua, China. He ended up being here. He and his wife moved over to Taiwan. He became the president of a Taiwan university. And he spoke like, where I grew up, we did not have a lot of Chinese people. Let's be clear on that. I grew up in Central Illinois. And he spoke very deliberately. He would say, Mark, you need to speak very well. To do this, you must practice. I'm like, okay. He's like, go talk. That was pretty easy for me to go. But he basically would do this over and over. And so he was the one who got me to break out over my fear of speaking in companies and in crowds and in groups and really get in front of it. And so he helped inspire the ACM, because by the time we left, 1 out of every 5 students that were in the computer science was also a member of ACM. A ratio that's a little bit better today. And then when I went over to do business, John Chandler. He's recently retired, business professor. He was the creator of the 390 programs, and he was the one who taught me, if you really want to make a difference, learn how to solve a problem. And if you can solve problems, people will hire you. So, but also what also happens is the clubs and the extracurriculars. When I was a freshman, I quickly discovered Dungeons and Dragons steam tunnels, climbing around all through the steam tunnels. Very exciting, not very much you want to tell your parents about, but it was a great time all nonetheless. We already talked about the Engineering Open House impact. We did something for Engineering Open House every year. It was just a phenomenal opportunity. I was kind of bummed I didn't win the last 2 years, but I'm thrilled we won when we did. Plato community was huge for me. It was a way to think about things, and I'm going to talk next about Plato, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. When I got back into it and started working on programming, CDC, that was the computer that we had in the basement of DCL. I worked with the operations group there. Got paid a little bit, but I had learned a whole lot about computers. And then lastly, how the ACM has touched me. But I really learned, most importantly, was it was cool to be a geek. It was just kind of like, this is not, now people are like, oh, geeks rule. Back then it wasn't quite like that, but it was cool to be a geek. So, but what it allowed me to do is create options I never dreamt of before. Out of my Engineering Open House project, we were working with the Votrex chip, working with the graphics routines, getting low, getting an understanding, piping off the ASCII stream before I got there, gave me the opportunity to go work for the Department of Defense in the Pentagon, working on ship infographics, or infometrics. Everything you want to know about every ship in the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere was being projected out there, gave us an opportunity to go work on it. I worked on the graphics routines, amazing opportunity. It's a little nervous when the FBI came for the background check to my little hometown. My mom worked in the bank. FBI went out to high school. No sooner did they leave in the high school, my mom got the phone call going, I don't know what trouble he's in, but the FBI's looking for him. It did not go over real well. But I got my background clearance. I was able to work at the Pentagon. It was a lot of fun. But it also taught me I didn't want to work in Washington. I liked being around here. So I then came back and I got to work with the Department of Navy. They knew I was pretty good at it. So I worked on the graphics routines for in-flight refueling opportunities. Great way to look at how things work. But why have planes practice and get in wrecks? If you can do it all on a computer, we simulated the whole thing on a computer. Realized I wanted to have more money because I was getting ready. I was got to save up for an engagement ring. So I worked in the Department of Agriculture working on graphics for plotting and data collection for photosynthesis. Boring job, worked in the middle of a shed in the middle of South Farms, but it paid well. And then lastly, it gave me the opportunity to leverage everything I had here to realize I don't want to work for the government. I want to work for a consulting firm, going to the best firm in the world at the time, Arthur Andersen, gave me a huge opportunity. Plato. So I talked about how Plato really did. The Plato, while we have one as a historical device up in the displays upstairs, it really changed computing and changed me. It was created in 1961 using a 1960 plasma. It was an amazing piece of technology, way ahead of its time. And it had been around for a while by Don Bitzer, the father of Plato, which I had just talked about. The features today that we take for granted in computing started here. The idea of group notes. We call them bulletin boards now. We call them websites. We call them a lot of things. Posted there. Keynotes, which now we call email. Forums, which was a collection of things, which we still have as reference pages. Remote screen sharing, unconceived before, done frequently there. Instant messaging, being able to chat between two people. When my parents were up here one time, I showed them how I could connect to a friend who lived in Maui. They're like, he doesn't live in Maui. You mean like Hawaii? So yeah, my dad's like, because my dad grew up on a farm, he knows a lot of good things. He goes, how do they get a wire there? And so we had to explain that to him and everything. But I mean, it's those type of thought processes, being able to quickly interact. Multiplayer games, I was really spent way too much time playing Empire, but it was a lot of fun. Online news, basically it set the stage that those notes applications, my junior year got to work on a fun project called VaxNotes, taking the G-Notes capability and bringing it over to the Vax, which then when Ray Ozzie, who was a programmer for Plato, started creating Lotus Notes. When Lotus Notes launched, the large majority of their beta customers happened to be in Chicago. We were there, we did all the beta customers. The fact that these kids grew up in Chicago and wanted to come home at Thanksgiving and stuff to see the parents and let the business pay for it, mere coincidence, but they basically were in a great opportunity that they had some phenomenal customers that we were able to launch out of Chicago and take Lotus Notes to where it was. So here's where Tom comes to you. How are we doing, Tom? We're doing okay. So it all comes back to what people believe is living a fulfilling life. When you think about it, most people tell you that you basically spend the first 30 years of your life learning, and the next 30 years of your life earning, and the last 30 years of your life, or whatever is left, returning. And this is a meaningful life. There's a lot of people talk about the simplicity of it and the way to do it. I fundamentally disagree with this. And I think that the way in which to do it, as a matter of fact, putting on a little bit of my Dave Cook class, thinking in parallel, not in serial, I look at it entirely different. I reorder it and I say, basically you should be doing all three each stage of your life. They change along the way. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But you need to change with it. You have to have this opportunity to get it done in a way so that you're not saying, well, I can't do any of this. I'm in earn stage of my life. Oh, wait, I'm in learn stage. Oh, wait, now I'm in return stage. You can't do it. You've got to give it all along the way. So we're going to switch from serial to parallel. Because parallel, we all know, multipath, way more fast. So what we have here is, I think, you got to aspire to be something that you're not, and you always got to try to grow to be new. Next, never rest on your laurels. Too many people say, I don't need to do that. I used to do that. I don't need to do that anymore. Don't rest on your laurels. Aspire to always challenge yourself and grow. Think outside the box. As people start to age, they start to get more constricted in their thinking. Don't be like that. Break yourself out of your box. Think about things in a whole new way and a whole new way of looking at things. Most importantly, remain curious. Ask yourself, what can I do here? How can I really make a difference? And along the way, stay connected. I mean, case in point today. Your best friend happened to be someone who worked for me 25 years ago. I haven't kept up with it, but I mean, it's that connections that's really kind of cool. Fortunately, he likes me. That's a good sign. But I mean, it's one of those things. Not everyone liked their former boss. But then also along the way, when you have good luck, make sure you leverage it. And remember that you had good luck. And for me, you just saw the essence of where my good luck came from. But when you think about the earning, not phase, layer, it comes in a couple different ways. Continue to solve problems. Make a difference. Get out there and really change the way things are done. Be action-oriented. Do not say, oh, that's for someone else to do. Reach out there. If you can do something about it, do something about it. Don't sit idly by. But get respect of others with principles. This can happen while you're young, all throughout your life. Be humble. Have integrity. Be respectful. Have conviction. And remember to always follow up. If you say you're going to do something, do it. It's so helpful along the way. And this comes as an odd statement because a lot of people tend to want to argue with it. Don't focus on your wealth. Anybody who's gone out and said, I'm going to do this because I want to get rich, has never gotten rich. Anyone who says, I want to do this because I love doing this, this is what I want to do, they get wealthy. They get wealthy in a couple ways. First off, they usually make a lot of cash. But more importantly, they get a lot more of experiences and the like. You got to focus on building experiences and relationships. That is the true wealth. That's what you need to be able to do. Returning. Everyone thinks that you're supposed to work the first 60 years of life and then spend the last 20, 30 years of your life writing checks. Not at all. You return along the way in whatever way you can. First, realize what you can offer. Make a difference. You could be in your teens, and your kids could be reaching out and doing mentoring to other kids or doing tutoring. Make a difference at any age of your life. Give back in many ways to whatever you can. Believe in your ability to impact. So many people will not try to make a difference because they don't fundamentally believe what's out there. Make a difference by believing in your impact. Invest what you can and then some. You want to give a little bit more because it really makes a difference. But do your homework well. Don't just give blindly because someone else has. Really do your homework on how you can make that difference. And then focus on making that difference. Really work towards it. So don't just write a check and say, okay, I've done that. Now I'll go do something else. Don't just give money to a charity. Go work, spend time with that charity. Then give the money. Don't just say, I'm going to write a check to the University of Illinois because I got some development person on my back. Get in here, get to work with them, go to those students, and then decide what you want to do, and then do it. You don't always have to report it. And then remember that you have to repay your good fortunes. Wherever you got this from, give it back to them. Okay? So how can we all do it? Let's start with a couple simple things. This university has done so much for all of us. Let's figure out a way to give back to that university. At a corporate level, be accessible. I'm amazed how many times students reach out to alumni. And the alumni are basically, oh, no, talk to HR people. Oh, no, I don't do that. They just want some input. They just want some guidance. Be available to them. Take 10 minutes. Even if it's in your car ride home, call them back. You will change these kids' lives. There's so much opportunity to make a difference with them. Leverage startup talent. These kids, the number one thing that computer science majors want to do, they used to be, when I was a kid, when I was here as a student, they want to get a master's degree, get a PhD, and go do research at some institution. Maybe a national lab, maybe out on the East or West Coast, get a job with IBM, get a job with Microsoft. But those are all changed. They all want to start a business. They want to go do startup talent. Make a difference. Go talk to them. If your business can take a chance on it, give it a try, try it. I mean, you never know how much it can change your business. And then lastly, be supportive of the University of Illinois. Don't just say it's an HR function. Pick up, come down here, go do HR. You would be amazed the impact and the difference that HR can get with a former alumni in a senior position on campus recruiting versus just sending down a bunch of HR folks collecting resumes. That difference helps a lot, so you need to do that. Personal level, be a mentor. Students they're thirsting for knowledge. They want to learn, they want to grow, they want to have that opportunity that you had. Make yourself available for it. I look at those professors, I kept in touch with many of them for 20, 30 years after I graduated. And some of them, I would still keep in touch, but they passed away. But you get that, and I'm not good at seances, but you get the idea that they really can make a difference. For me, it's important. Spread the reality about Urbana-Champaign. The secret's out. You saw the climbing of it. But more importantly, go out there and really talk about it and make sure everyone understands it. And then donate to the cause. This makes the development people super happy. Scholarships. There's a great matching program going on now. It's really kind of cool. Event sponsorships. If you want, for a while, engineering open house couldn't raise enough funds. What do you know? Mysteriously, someone would say, hey, we've got our money all of a sudden. That's good stuff. And if you really want to be adventurous, name the college. Larry Geese proved that off. I think he shocked everybody when they decided they were going to name the college after him. But he had, for good reason. He was an amazing surprise to a lot of people. But he is just a great individual. But what people don't realize about Larry, real quick, is for the last 25 years, he came down here 2-3 times a semester, drove from Chicago, came down here, met with the students before class, taught a class, met with students after the class, hung out, took them out for drinks, turned around that night, drove back home, and that was his day. He'd do it 2-3 times a semester. And he did it for 25 years. He knew this school very well. So, yeah, people were surprised he had that kind of money. He doesn't dress or look that part. But he basically was, and he's very humble about his own self, but basically he knew what he was investing in. And for him, it was a great bet. For whoever decides to invest in the CS department or what may eventually become the College of Computing, look out. This is a great opportunity. Okay? Now, you may have some connections I don't have. So if you get access to the federal level and you want to tell them what to do, be more supportive for research grants for university. University is pretty good at getting research grants. 1 out of every $5 comes this way. That's good. We could do better. We got to improve immigration options for graduates. I am so sad when I meet a student who does a great job and who ends up leaving the country because they're told, oh, you're doing a startup? I'm sorry, you can't stay. You have 90 days to get out of our country. That is so wrong. I look forward to the day when someone graduates with a grad degree or a STEM degree, get a bachelor's of computer science from University of Illinois, you walk up on stage, I don't know, who is it usually? The dean congratulates you. You walk over, the department chair hands you your diploma. You walk over and an INS agent says, welcome to America, gives you a green card. That would be an amazing day. We export so much talent, it's stupid. And we need to change that. And lastly, since it has a constant coming between Champaign, if you could talk Amtrak into getting a high-speed connection, that would be just awesome. And high-speed internet while we're at it, too, on it. But also at the state level. We need to make sure we have consistent support and leadership for the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. The whole University of Illinois system, but really be supportive. Don't give mixed messages depending on what time of the re-election it is. Better funding for UAUC? It is shocking how much reduced it is from when I was school here 35 years ago to today. But you average out the dollars, it's about 1/3 of what it used to be. It's so sad. I mean, it used to be 37%, now it's about 12%. And so it's so sad that we're at that position. And then lastly, we need to increase STEM focus, especially for girls. One of the things that we are actually trading up as a percentage of applications in terms of the number of females and number of underrepresented attending the university computer science department. Unfortunately, it's still not enough. I look forward to the day, having been a student here when like 1 out of every 8 or 9 people in computer science was female. It was a lot of work to find a female that was in your degree that you could get married to. It was really tough. I did it, but it's really tough. But what you get into a situation of is, I like the 50-50. That would have been a good mix. We need to figure out how to get more female into this. Same thing with underrepresented. Right now it's about 1 out of every 20. It needs to be much better than that. I mean, in line with the demographics, 1 out of every 8, 1 out of every 10. I'm sorry, 8 out of every, let me rethink this. 8 out of every 20. So 4 out of every 10. We need to see that kind of representation. All right? Now, what's the benefit if we can do this? What's the benefit of giving back? We get to fuel our economy with this talent. We can empower our graduates to change the world. That's what I was blessed with by coming here, was the ability to go out and make a difference, whatever I could see. Enhance their exposure with the partnerships with research, corporate, and education. This is well within your control. You can make this happen. And commercialized professor-led research in Illinois, keep it in Illinois. We have professors who have research opportunities in North Carolina or Massachusetts because they got some federal, from some state dollars to be able to do it. We should be able to keep them here in Illinois. The DPI initiative, Discovery Partners Institute, is a great start for that, but we have an opportunity to do it here. Your corporations can help do it. And then lastly, we need to keep our retained students here. It is so sad to see how many go out to the West Coast, East Coast. Great for them, great opportunities for them. I mean, that's the reason why the average salary for a CS degree last year was $96,000 for an average student. That's average. There are some students who are picking up $250,000 with a $100K signing bonus. It's amazing to think about. When I graduated here, that was not the going rate. But you end up in a situation of being able to see that happen. That's because of what the value they have, because of what we've built. And what we've built is because of what was built for us. And we have to be able to make that difference and really come together with it. And so with that,